welcome to Ask a Pro. Grant Cardone here. I have somebody that is definitely a professional in his space, and you need to be a professional in your space. I think you'd admit that and agree with that the pros are the ones that get paid, and there's a big, big difference between the amateurs and the professionals. Dustin Ruge. Ruge, what kind of name is Ruge?
I think it's German. I think.
You're not sure that. This guy, you got to know him. Okay, he's written 2 books in the last 18 months. The Successful Sales Manager, and your new book, which I'm so excited about reading. Okay, it's awesome. I mean, this is not being in the top 20%. This is for a guy that's written a lot of books. They got a lot of valuable information in here. So, Dustin, before we talk about what they're going to get from the books, why do you think it's important to be a pro?
Well, it's interesting because one of the reasons why I wrote the top 20% is I've been in small business for a long time. I've been in sales and marketing, and what's interesting about it is the most successful people are the part of the top 20%. They earn more money, they have higher incomes, get better promotions, and what's funny about it is almost all of them have one common thread. They're really good at sales and marketing. They know how to incorporate that in their business. One of the fun things I love to do when I talk to younger groups is I always ask them, I say, hey, listen, everybody here, how much want to make the most amount of money possible in what they do, right? And they all raise their hands. And then I ask them, how many people here want to be in sales? And their hands all drop. I'm like, why? Why? I'm like, this is one of these areas where you can literally become and make the most amount of money and have the most success possible, but there's that stigma around sales. So one of the things I wanted to do, and you do this really well, is demystify sales, demystify marketing, so you understand that everybody is selling all the time.
Right.
It never stops. If you're not a salesperson, like your other book, Sell or Be Sold, it's exactly what it is, right?
So you were at a conference here in Miami Beach.
Correct.
And the audience was lawyers.
Correct.
Like big name lawyers, right?
Yep.
So what are you doing there talking to them about sales and successful sales and successful sales management and being in the top 20%? How do you, because I've done lawyers and doctors, and I hate the audience, man. I hate talking to these guys. So why you?
Well, they are, like attorneys, for example, they are some of the most well-educated people in the world, but they are also the people in the most need of sales and marketing training. And the reason why is it's no different than any other small business people. What small business people do is they go out and they get good at what they do, right? Dentists, doctors, whatever. And they go out and they start their own businesses, right? And you talk about a lot of times how 2/3 of all small businesses are break even or failing.
Right.
Well, 80% of those small businesses fail in 5 years. And what they do is they go out and they're really good at doing something. The problem is most of them are not good at sales and marketing, and as a result of that,
you
they
think
fail.
That's the number one?
It's the number one reason why. Yeah. Because they just don't know how to do the most important aspect of what they do, which is how to get it out to other people, sell it, and service it to their clients. And that's one of the biggest failures, and that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book.
Yeah. Do you think that the guy starts a company. Katie's going to start a company. She wants to be successful. She goes into it. She does the business plan. She has the idea for the cookie.
If they do a business plan.
I've never done a business plan. Do you think it's important to do a business plan?
It's important to do a marketing plan because without the marketing plan, there is no business. So there is no business plan. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying then even people doing business plans aren't really doing business plans.
Correct.
There's no plan for business.
Right. Exactly.
I always say this thing. I said, look, man, the pros. The pros can take any business and make a business out of it because they're doing business.
Yep.
So. You had something here. 80% of small businesses fail every year, and you think it's because of one thing.
It's because they don't know how to sales and market. They don't know how to get their products and services out to people that are going to buy them. So in other words, to your point, if they have a business plan, that might be great, but that dies at the water's edge, right? When they go out into the market, they end up failing. And some of these people, like for example, some of these attorneys I talk to, they might be the most successful attorneys in the world, but if nobody knows who they are.
Yeah, they bill $1,200 an hour, but.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's like you always talk about, what is the ROI of obscurity?
Right.
They don't know. So, and you have to help them.
So how would you get a lawyer that doesn't think, or Katie that doesn't think she's a salesperson, to take the time to read a sales book?
It's important because, as you know, people will only read about one book a year. So when they go into all these different facets, they're always talking about, hey, you need to read this book or that book, when the reality is they don't. So one of the things I did with both my books when I wrote them is I made them as reference guides. In fact, a lot of my clients that actually read the books, they're sitting on their desks. And I always tell them, listen, when you get into closing meetings or you need to create a marketing plan, go back to the book. It's there, right? I'm not just giving this to you for entertainment. It's to help guide you through your business process so you have those procedures in place. And that's one of the easiest ways to do that, is to give them step-by-step instructions how to do it in one place.
So I can go here and find what I need?
And for professionals, yes, in most cases, yeah. Everything from the closing dynamics to prospecting. I even go through prospecting equations, everything that a standard small business person would need to know to be successful.
Talk to me about what you think are some of the key ingredients to making those top standout 20%ers.
It's a lot of it has to do with drive and will and want to succeed. The other part of it is process. One of the things I talk to people about a lot with businesses are great businesses are run by great systems. And great salespeople actually create their own systems, whether or not they actually recognize it or not. So when you look at great sales and marketing people, they're doing the same thing over and over, and they're refining that process, right? The people that fail the most at it are the ones that whimsically go at it. So one of the things I talk about in the book is how can you create a business process in your sales process? And how can you refine that and make it work for you in both your sales and marketing? The other thing that's interesting is over 60% of salespeople now that are hired have no sales training that go on with them, and they have no defined business process within their companies. In other words, the companies are saying, you're a salesperson, Grant, come in here and start selling for me. They have nowhere to start. So what I try to do is give them that starting point so they understand, okay, what is it that they can do to make sure that they're successful irrespective of what the company's doing.
So let's go back to the first one. Is there more than two?
Just 2 books right now.
Okay, so no, more than 2 indicators that make the people in the top 20%.
It's a lot of things. It depends on what industries that they're in.
So right now I have drive and process.
Right, drive and process.
So let's take the first one. How does a guy find his drive?
That's a good question. When I hire people, one of the things I do in the Successful Sales Manager is I talk about all the questions I ask to determine whether or not somebody has drive. And one of the ways that I do that is when I hire for character. I don't hire for skills. If somebody has skills, that's great. I want them on board, right? Yeah. But character is the key because
and what do you mean by character?
Well, character means something I can't teach, right? Something I can't train. Are they going to get up every morning? Are they going to be driven to do what they need to do? Do they have the will and the motivation to want to succeed in sales? And I try to find that.
How would you find that out with me?
Well, I would do that by walking through, for example, the questions I have in my first book, which is, Grant, I'm going to ask you certain questions like, are you competitive? And they're usually open at a question. I know you are. So, but I ask about a lot of times about what's their past success, what have they done? Because usually with salespeople, it's their past success. It really is a good indicator of their forward movement. And so what I look for is what have they done in the past, but more importantly, who are they as an individual? What drives them? Is it money? Are they competitive? Do they really want to succeed? Because if they have all those things, guess what? Sales is where they should be. And that's what's so great about sales.
Right. Okay, so let's say I get the job, I land the job, I convince you I'm competitive, and I am. I am competitive, and I'm freaking driven, and I'm on it, and I'm in the top 10%, and then something
You're hired.
Yeah. But let's say something happens, I'm with the company now, and I lose it.
Right.
Because a lot of people call me, dude, I want to be a top 20er, I want to be a top 1%er.
Yep.
But something happened. I got a divorce. I lost it. I lost my job, the economy. I lost a bunch of money, whatever, and I lost it. How do you tell people to how to rediscover that drive?
And you just nailed something because sales is all about the attitude of the seller, not the buyer. And I constantly tell people that when they sell, it's all about you. It's not about the client. So when you have salespeople, for example, in those situations, you have to figure out at the core what the issue is. And the other thing about management is, I'm not a big believer in micromanagement. I talk about in the book. High performers in the top 20% do not react well to micromanagement. There are people that are willful on their own. So you have to be able to macromanage them. You have to be able to work in a way where they're going to discover and you're going to help them get to that point. But if you micromanage them
in fact, if you bring a system in on a highly productive person, they're going to be like, well, I got my own, it's what you said earlier. They already have their own systems, whether they know it or not. And they're going to fight that new system because they're like, I guess you got to sell them on how it fits into the two. So how do I rediscover that again? How do I?
Well, you rediscover. I mean, first off, you have to figure out where the core of the issue is, right? Is it family issue? Is it things like that? It's hard to discover. And unfortunately, and I tell people this: when you manage salespeople, you manage them each individually. Collectively, you can't do that. One shoe doesn't fit all, right? So part of it is discovering what the issue is, and then part of it is figuring out where their drive is.
Just like in a sale.
Yeah, getting back where they start. Like, for example, salespeople, you see this all the time in so many different industries. You'll see them restart their year, right? And it's like Groundhog Day. It's like, God, I'm doing this again? Well, you have to remind them why they're in sales to begin with.
So return to when you were winning.
Right, exactly.
And when were you doing great? When were you winning? When were you killing it? What were you doing there? When was the graph going like that? When were you rocking and rolling? So really to bring somebody back, because I know throughout my sales career and even my business career, there becomes times of the year. Here we are in February, 2 months into the year. The January New Year thing is kind of rubbed off, and I'm like, hey, what am I doing?
Groundhog's Day.
What goals was I thinking about in January? Was that a little stupid? I think I got a little too big there. I got carried away.
Yep.
So you're saying, hey, bring that guy back to the reason.
They're in sales.
Why does he want to do whatever he's doing? Right. And
the reality is, if they're out in the field or they're working with clients and they love what they're doing, they should be in sales anyways. Yeah. If they're not, maybe they're in the wrong profession.
Sales process. Okay, you talk a lot about sales process and systems being very important. I'm not a big systems guy.
Right.
Probably because I'm productive.
Right.
But I got my own system. I just don't really know what it is most of the time.
Yep.
Why systems, and what's the downside of systems? Because I don't hear people talk about the downside.
Yep. But by the way, when I talk about systems, I'm more talking about habits. Habits create systems in human culture, right? So we have all these systems run businesses, but one of the things I often talk about is Aristotle's famous quote, which is success is a production of habit. And so as a result of that, what I try to get salespeople to do is get into successful habits. And when they do that, that is a process. That's what they follow. It's a system. And then you develop the good habits, and then you wean them off the bad habits. And you don't do it by telling them. In many cases, they have to discover it.
Okay, so I thought when you said systems, I'm thinking CRMs.
It's part of it. It's a measurement. But measurement doesn't manage, right? It only gives you indicators. But when successful salespeople are really successful, it's because they develop those habits. And that's why I spend a lot of time with salespeople, and I talk about in the books, is how do you develop those successful habits so that you can create those systems for yourself to be successful? Because everybody does it a little bit differently, right? Some people are more motivated, some people do other things differently. But the bottom line is each develops habits, and when they repeat those habits successfully, they create those systems.
So what are some of those habits? What are some good habits for the top 20%? You're around a lot of salespeople.
Yep.
So.
No, you talk about this. In fact, I heard you talk about this in a recent speech about being on the offense or defense, right? So one of the first things I tell salespeople, do not start your day by reading emails, because immediately they're starting on defense, right?
Yeah.
And they're being reactive to everything that they're doing. So one of the first things I tell them to do is do one of the most important things that you need to do at the beginning of the day. Get energized, be on the offense in what you're doing. Set expectations. Set expectations for when you do emails. So a lot of times I tell people I check emails 3 times a day. That's it. And I'm on the defense, but when I set that expectation, people understand it, right? The point is getting them active and getting them in those habits of doing the right things. And once they do that over and over again, their sales numbers start climbing. And they don't realize why it's happening, but it does. Yeah.
Other habits you see at the top performers?
Other habits are just...
I mean, some of those things you're like, okay, that guy's going to be a killer.
Yeah, the other habits are a lot of it has to do with sales tactics and closing. So one of the first things I work with salespeople is I actually do it backwards. I start with the closing meeting. Because I'm like, this is why you're selling, right? You are closing. And it's funny because we know the vast majority of salespeople never ask for the close, right? 78% will never ask. And so I'm like, why are you selling? Are you there to make a friend? You know, and you can make a friend. But the point is, I always start the training backwards. Start with the closing meeting. Get that down, because that's the most important thing they can do. And then you can walk back to the sales process of whatever that is. So part of it is having them nailing all that down. So habitually they're going through the same thing over and over.
So in golf, you know, I mean, really the way to teach somebody how to golf is teach the putt first.
Right. Yeah.
If you can't drop a putt, you're not going to learn the rest of your game.
That's true.
And the more that short game improves, the more the long game's going to improve. So I agree with you completely.
100%.
Great salespeople know how to close it.
Yep.
And I think about like Art Wadlin. He's a great real estate agent out in Tucson, Arizona. And first meeting, he's like, okay, what are you going to buy from me? What's the goal here? How soon's the closing date? I'm like, he really puts you on the dime right from the get-go. And then keep his bandwidth really full. You talk about marketing and branding a lot in sales, and I think a lot of people don't think, and you're here on Ask the Pro, so a lot of people don't think sales is marketing and promotion and branding and advertising. Talk about all those.
That's the biggest problem in business right now is you have sales and marketing, they don't communicate. They don't work well together. And those where the businesses fail. Branding, and I've heard you talk about this many times as well. You go through 4 psychological states when you're selling. When somebody is buying from you, they're asking 4 things of themselves. And the first 2 questions are, do I want to do business with this person? And do I want to do business with their business, right? And the first question, if you can't get past that, you're never going to sell anything. So, and that's part of the reason why I always tell people the number one brand that you're selling is yourself. We know from studies, and I talk about it in the book, the number one differentiator in every sale is not the products and it's not the services. It is you. It is whether or not people actually want to work with you. And it's very critical for people to get that down. So part of that is I teach them, listen, you are part of the brand. You are part of the delivery. And that's what they're ultimately
You're saying if I work here at this company, I am an extension of the brand itself.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, in many cases,
even if my name's not the company.
Yeah, exactly. Because you are a representative of the brand, and you are the brand. Because right now, people are getting inundated with marketing and sales all the time. And they're trying to figure out who do I trust, right? And when you get that word down, and you get that credibility. Because I always tell people when you prospect, one word is curiosity. And then the two words when you're closing is credibility and trust. And if you can't nail that credibility and trust at the personal level, it doesn't matter how good your products or services
So how do I do that, though, man?
Well, you do it.
How do I nail the credibility and trust? How do I take, you're a people are going to decide whether to buy this book about whether they like you or not.
Right.
It's easy enough to get it. It's at Amazon. They don't have to ship it themselves. They don't have to print it. They don't
Right.
have to write it. You just order it, dude. I mean, people are like, books are expensive. I'm like, well, then write one. See how expensive that is, dude.
Exactly.
Okay? So they can order. So the question is going to be, they're going to either order it because I say, go to Amazon right now and get the top 20%.
Right.
Or you guys are going to like him and buy it. So show me how to show them in a practical now.
Okay.
How they would trust you enough to spend $20 on the book.
Okay, well, part of it is, and when I teach people to sell, I teach them to stop pitching and start having conversations. We know from studies, everybody wants that conversation. In other words, the easiest way to get to a conversation about pricing and what this book costs is if I start pitching this book right now, right? Without knowing anybody about who I'm selling them to, who they are, what their needs are. So one of the things I always teach salespeople is start with the conversation, because that's what everybody wants right now. If you don't know the needs and you don't know the gaps, the goals and the gaps of each client, which I always talk about, you can't sell to that client because the client has no reason to buy this book.
So there's people watching right now.
Exactly.
How would you start that conversation with them?
It would be pretty, it's hard because it's singular dialogue, right?
It's easy, but it's the same thing. I mean, I do these streams every day. I'm doing audiences.
Exactly. So, the simple thing for your audience would be...
The pro can do anything.
Yeah.
Ask the pro, bro. Ask the pro.
Fair enough. So, in this case, for your audience, it would be very simple. Are you happy in sales and are you making the most amount of money possible? Because if you're not, you have ways in which you can get better at what you're doing, right? And that's one of the things I outline.
I can make more money. I know I can make more money.
And I tell you what,
I'm not as happy as I could be.
Right, exactly.
So now what's the transition?
So basically what I'm trying to do is to figure out why, right? Most salespeople will indicate that they're not making enough money because they're immobile, their brand's not strong. When I talked earlier, when we started this out, the most profitable people, the most successful people in sales are the top 20% because they are the most marketable, most desirable company or a brand within a company. So one of the things I often tell salespeople is companies can't hide you anymore, right? When you're on LinkedIn, your CV is out for the world, right? Everybody knows
CV?
who you are. CV, like a resume.
What's a CV?
A resume, basically. It's another word for resume.
What's CV stand for?
I have no idea.
Okay.
But I know people use it, especially in the legal industry. But basically, your resume is out there now in the social media world. And headhunters right now, it's the number one place they look is they're scouring the internet. If you have a successful sales record and you feel like you're not making enough money, and I interview people every week that are in this boat, and I simply tell them when I'm interviewing, I'm like, listen, you're being overpaid or underpaid for what you're doing. Pure and simple, because I understand the market. But the thing is, a lot of them don't know, how do I get my brand out?
Now I like this, okay? You see, you just gave me a piece right here. This is why I have this show, okay? It's like, he just said something I will use for the rest of my career. Hey, you're either being underpaid or you're being overpaid. You're never, ever paid fairly. Ever, never. So ask yourself, now I'm using what he just said, having a conversation with you. Ask yourself right now, be honest, are you being underpaid or overpaid? If you're being underpaid, you need this book and you need it today. It's at Amazon. How much is it?
It is on Amazon. I believe it is $16.95.
It's $16.95. If you're being underpaid, it's not by $17.
Right.
It's not by $34. It's not by $340. It's
a huge amount.
Millions of dollars. Okay, now I'm selling you. Now, if you're in the top 20%, well, that's who's watching this show anyway. And you guys already read. And don't listen to him. Just listen to me. Go buy the book right now. Because I have your trust already. And this is what he said. Credibility and trust sell. I've branded myself. I've marketed myself. You guys trust Uncle G. Buy the book, okay? Don't worry about how he says his last name. Worry
or CV,
about
right?
how you. Yeah, don't worry about CV either. Worry about how you spell it. Ruge. Okay,
you got it.
The name of the book, The Top 20%. What? Like how long does it take somebody to go from where they are right now to be in that top 10 or 15?
It can be fast. It can be fast if they have the drive and the desire to want to do it. They just need the mechanics and the process.
So it doesn't have to take months.
No, because the reality is most people that get into sales and marketing have no degree in sales. They leave college and then companies expect them to learn these things. That's why I write this. And that's why I write sales management as well, because most companies don't provide any support on this. They don't do it. And we're professionals here. We're here right now, right? We're successful at what we do. And the bottom line is we did this because we willfully got to that point. We learned, right? What we're doing is making it easier now for people to get to the same levels because now we're taking the intelligence we have and putting it into pieces just like you do in your books to make them successful.
I love the top 20%, man, because I just wish you would have said the top 1%. I don't know why you picked the top 20, man. He wanted the big audience, right?
I guess so, yeah.
So look, I want you guys. We do this show here at Grant Cardone TV. I grab guys like Dustin. This guy, I met him in a convention in Dallas. Big group, big Fortune 100 name, a monster company. He works with salespeople all over the world. This book will help you. I want you to get the book. And if you know somebody like Dustin, maybe it's you, maybe it's somebody you work for, maybe it's an old manager you had, maybe it's an entrepreneur that you met in the past, I want to have them on Ask a Pro, because each of you out there knows somebody, or you're that person that is a professional that knows something about some space, whether it's Pinterest or Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube. There's so much to learn right now, or technology or mobile or follow-up or marketing, branding. I don't know it all. That's why I interview guys like this, to know, hey, how do I keep my game up here at the top? What is the biggest, before we leave, what is like is there one thing that you've learned in your career, you're like, that one thing was a jewel, a monster jewel for me? There's one thing you're like, that was a life changer for me.
Running a business as a process, running systems, whether it be individual systems or management systems.
Sounds so boring, man.
I know. I tell you what, it's boring as hell. But the backbone of successful business is based upon process and systems, because they're repeatable and scalable. Because right now, the biggest reason why companies fail and they have no value and equity is because they don't know how to scale their business, and salespeople are the same way. If you know how to scale yourself, you know how to leverage yourself, support yourself with what you're doing through books and learning and everything.
When
you
he's
do.
saying scale, he means now not selling the same number of units,
right,
but now growing into a company yourself, where the salesperson is no longer limited by the bricks he can put in the wall. Right.
Well, there's a simple sales equation I always talk about, which is activity times effectiveness equals results. Activity is limited. We only have so many hours in the day, but your effectiveness is unlimited. And that's what I always tell sales professionals. I'm like, get really good at your effectiveness. And if you're good with your time as well on the activity side, you're going to make more money in sales than you've ever made in your life.
Thank you for being on.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you, Grant.
This great guy right here. You want to get to know him. Get to know him through his books, The Top 20%. And while you're there, I bet you can find another copy of The Successful Sales Manager. Hey, thanks for watching Ask a Pro, brought to you by Grant Cardone TV. Every week, I'm going to be bringing you Ask a Pro, and I look forward to when you're on Ask a Pro.